Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. I'm Chrissy and this is my daughter Avery.
We are getting a sister. We get a sister.
So Avery is just over 15 months old and I wanted to make this video just to explain her conditions a little bit better. When Avery was 3 days old, she went into a cardiac arrest. The cardiac arrest lasted 40 minutes, which means she was left with a hypoxic brain injury, which is an injury to the brain caused by lack of oxygen. She had an MRI in the hospital and the MRI showed that the damage to her brain was severe and it was mostly in the areas of her cerebellum and her hippocampus. The cerebellum is responsible for things like posture, coordination, balance, muscle strength, and the hippocampus is responsible for memory and learning. She spent 10 very long days in the paediatric intensive care unit and then another 4 long weeks in between 2 different hospitals. When Avery was finally discharged home, we weren't really given any sort of prognosis on what her future would look like, how fast she would develop or what she would or wouldn't be able to do in the future. Because every child is so different and even every brain injury is so different, even ones that could be really similar to Avery's, the outcome can still be night and day. They can be totally different. So there is absolutely no way for them to predict what her future would look like. All that we knew is that as parents, despite what she may or may not be able to do or however her future may look, it was our job as a family to make sure she was given the best quality of life. Avery did come home with a nasogastric tube, which is a tube that went into her nose, through past her throat and her esophagus and into her stomach. Before Avery's event, I was breastfeeding her, and when she was in hospital, I continued to express so that she could still get my breast milk through her tube. When she came home, that's how she continued to be fed. We would be passing the breast milk through her NG tube. I tried my hardest to sort of teach her how to breastfeed again once we got home, but her coordination was badly affected in terms of her sort of suck and swallow, so we quickly learned that breastfeeding just wasn't going to be an option again. As you can probably tell, Avery doesn't have an NG tube in anymore, and this is because about a month ago she actually went for a gastrostomy, which is an operation that places a G tube straight into her tummy. So the tube now goes from the surface of her abdomen and into her stomach. She is still receiving 100% of her nutrition through the tube. She's on a specialised paediatric feed. I do try to give her puree at least once a day. Some days this goes better than others, but it's mostly for enjoyment and to try and keep those muscles working and hopefully try and improve them over time. As a direct result of the brain injury, Avery does have cerebral palsy. Cerebral palsy is a really big spectrum. I didn't know anything about it before Avery got her brain injury, but I do know that it affects her motor skills, it affects her muscles and her balance and her coordination. Avery has hypotonia in her arms, which basically means that they are incredibly stiff and tight. So unfortunately she doesn't really have much use of them unless we are moving them for her, just because they are so tense all the time. She also has hypotonia, which is pretty much the opposite of hypotonia, in her trunk and neck, which means the muscle tone in her trunk and in her neck is still quite weak. So she doesn't have very good trunk control and she doesn't have very good head control. She's not yet sitting unaided and can't really hold her weight. She can lift her head up for a few seconds at a time when we're doing tummy time, which again we try and do every day just to strengthen those muscles and she is getting better and better at it. Sorry for the abrupt change of scenery. Avery started to get quite fussy in my arms, so she's doing what she loves to do best. Quick backstory, when Avery was younger, sort of 3, 4, 5, 6 months old, before we got the dystonia diagnosis, she was constantly unsettled. She was so fussy. The only way that we could keep her happy was in our arms, but not just in our arms, we had to be bouncing. And I don't just mean gentle bouncing, I mean we literally had to be squatting with her to keep her happy. If we slowed down, if we sat down, she would start to cry again. It was exhausting. We learned that the only thing that was actually keeping her happy was sitting in front of, at the time, her favourite movie, which started off as Shrek, then Moana, and now for the past what feels like an eternity, it has been Frozen 1 and 2. So if ever she is upset to the point where she doesn't want to be held, she doesn't want to do any of her therapy, she's not hungry, she doesn't need changing, Frozen is what we fall back on. So that was a sidestep. Back on topic. Another condition that Avery has as a result of her brain injury is dystonia. And dystonia is a movement disorder that creates spasms and contractions in her muscles. It's sort of impulses sent from her brain that create these movements, and Avery's is caused by the basal ganglia being damaged in her brain through her brain injury. The dystonia causes Avery to make some quite funny movements. Sometimes she will crane her neck all the way over to the side, and sometimes her back will arch to the point where you literally think she's going to hurt herself. The movements can be quite painful and they are quite hard to watch, but she is on a medicine to help treat them now. They can also be exacerbated by other things, such as when she's ill, if she's tired, if she's unhappy, and if she has reflux. And Avery does have severe reflux. She had a pH study to confirm that. She doesn't necessarily vomit with her reflux. You can hear it sort of come up and then she swallows it back down. But because of her poor coordination and weak swallow, because of that and because of the extra saliva that she produces because of the reflux, it makes her an aspiration risk. And what that means is basically the saliva or the vomit, she can choke on it because she's not swallowing properly, and then it can go down to her lungs instead of down to her stomach where it's supposed to go, and this can cause chest infections or in bad cases pneumonia. Thank goodness, touch wood, Avery has not had a chest infection or pneumonia or anything like that yet. She has coped with her secretions quite well. Despite her conditions, Avery is still a very happy baby in general, and she does find joy in things. There's things that she loves. She loves her brothers and they just absolutely adore her. She loves being thrown in the air. She's a real adrenaline junkie. She loves Frozen. We don't know how severely Avery is going to be affected by her brain injury in the future. We don't know how much more she will develop. We don't know if she'll ever be able to walk or talk. The wait and see is definitely the hardest part of this journey. The unknown is terrifying. So for me personally, I just have to put that part to the back of my mind and just celebrate every single milestone, even if it's a tiny one. Moving forward, it is our job as parents and as a family just to make sure that she's happy and her life is fulfilled and she has experiences. She may not be able to experience things the same way other people do, but we will make sure that she can experience them. As long as she is happy and our other children are happy and we as a family unit are happy and all work together, then the rest is manageable. I'm going to leave it there for today. I'm sure there's a million things that I've forgotten to mention, but I've literally just tried to cram 15 months into a short video. So if you do have any questions, then leave them in the comment box and I will try and answer them. If you are on a similar journey, or even if you're not and you just want to follow our journey, then I would love it if you would subscribe, and I'll see you all in the next video. Bye guys. And then you won't really get What? What? I see you. I see you. Yes. Before Avery so expressing in the hospital. Do you not want mommy to talk?